Okay, I think we're like...
Yeah, seems we're good to go. Okay, so with that, hi, my name is Akash. Thank you very much for joining. I'm joined today with Abhishek and Shiv from the Red Hat AI Innovation team. What we're going to do today is walk you through our synthetic data generation hub. If you are interested in what all other kind of AI innovations are happening in Red Hat, feel free to scan that QR code at the top right. But without any further ado, I want to walk us through the agenda for today's discussion. What will happen in the next 5 minutes is what I want to take you through why customizing LLMs is important, especially if you're an enterprise. What does that look like, right? And what role does synthetic data generation plays in that workflow? I also will briefly touch upon exactly what are the kind of synthetic data generation methods. And then I'll pass it on to Shiv, who will walk you through sort of a hello world version of SDG Hub. SDG Hub is our tool for creating synthetic data generation. He will walk you through the concepts, the 101 that you need before you can get into the more complicated things. And talking about the complicated thing, he will pass the baton to Abhishek, who will walk you through how to customize a reasoning model, a Nemotron to be particular, with some documents and knowledge base that you have the model does not know. Okay, and then finally, if the time permits, we'll open the floor for questions. But keep the questions coming, and we'll keep sort of finding time in between to answer them. So with that, let me start why enterprises specifically need to customize language models. So by some statistics, less than 1% of enterprise data is available in large language models today. One of my colleagues likes to say that, if this number was any bigger, you have a security risk at hand to deal with, that's a much bigger problem. But that sort of underpins why, when you pay for a large language model or download a free one from the internet, you really have to think about how can you put your data into this model, because without that, it's not really useful. And I know some of you might say that, hey, Akash, what about RAG? RAG is what I like to say is a stopgap measure. There's definitely merit to having data available in context for your language model to create some queries and answers. But I hope by the end of this presentation, Abhishek will convince you that the difference in the ability of the model to do great things with your data when it knows it versus when it's available through RAG is tremendous, and it's worth therefore doing this customization. Okay, so talking about the customization, let me walk you through one of the workflows for how language model customization actually looks like in practice. Obviously, there are many ways of doing this. This is one particular one that is probably more common and more often you'll encounter it. And it goes something like this, right? So you create a few seed examples, and seed examples are essentially question, answer, or instruction response pairs that you basically use to say, hey, you know what? This is the kind of task I want my language model to do, and this is the kind of response I expect my language model to provide in return. Now, what happens with that, additionally, you may want to base this entire thing on your own knowledge base, on your documents. So you provide that as well. Step one is, synthetic data generation. Now, what happens in this stage is those seed examples are used in combination with your document to create a very large training data set. Next, we take that data set and we do some kind of mixing. So we will clean it, filter it, figure out what proportions, what different skill set needs to be mixed. There's a lot of active research work in this space. You'd be surprised how important this stage is. So definitely pay attention to that part. But then once you have your final data set, you do some kind of post-training or continued pre-training, some combination of SFT or RL more recently. Then you do some kind of evaluations and pick a checkpoint, and you have your final customized language model. Okay. So if you were to look at it from a point of view, so what is the most time-consuming and expensive part of this workflow? Undoubtedly, it's data, right? If you were to go and buy this data for customization, I mean, you probably are all aware of the companies that sell that, and they are very, very expensive, ranging anywhere from between $5 a pop to $50 a pop for very, very difficult questions. And what our goal today is to show you how through SDG Hub, you can do that very, very efficiently and for a fraction of the cost of you would have paid if you were to go and do it manually. Okay, so before we get into exactly how to do that, how SDG Hub enables it, I want to touch upon the two types of synthetic data generation methods that are out there. And so these are very large buckets. Of course, there are many other, but I just want to sort of give a 35,000 feet view of, you probably have heard the word distillation. So this kind of synthetic data generation is really, really effective when you have a pattern that you're trying to interpolate or extrapolate, right? So if I showed you how to add 3 numbers, maybe you can add the 4th one. If I showed you how to write 4 letters, you can write the 5th one. If I showed you how to summarize 7 documents, you can summarize the 8th, right? One of the most prominent work in this space was a self-instruct work, which I don't think I need to talk much about here. But the more important to customization workflow is the document-grounded SDG, right? And what's happening here is we're providing a language model with facts about our enterprise or our own domain, and then we want this language model or our teacher model, as we say in the SDG world, to convert or transform the knowledge in the documents into training data that would look like an instruction response pair or a question, a query, and some answer, maybe with a thinking block as well. The idea here is that if I told you the first 3 presidents of the United States, there's no way for you to interpolate or extrapolate or distill, so to say, the 4th president of the country, right? It's a fact, it needs to be memorized. And so it better come from the document. Our own work lab is basically where we created this method and will be the premise for the SDG Hub document grounded SDG method. Okay, so with that, I want to pass the baton to Shiv, who will walk you through the basics of SDG Hub.
All right, so now that we've seen why synthetic data is essential for enterprise LLM workflows, let's talk about how we actually build those workflows. When we set out to build a toolkit for synthetic data generation, we knew it had to be built around a few core principles. First, the building blocks had to be modular and reusable. No more one-off Python scripts for each data generating algorithm. We wanted to give users the ability to compose and customize their own generation pipelines using standardized components. Second, we wanted the workflow creation to be intuitive and ideally low code. Something that felt more like writing a config file than building an entire application. And finally, had to be scalable. Whether you're generating 10 examples or 10,000 examples, the system should just work reliably and efficiently. So what does that look like in practice? Let's walk through a real example, kind of like a hello world with SDG Hub. And while we're at it, I'll show you 3, maybe 2.5-ish core components you need to know before you can start using this to generate data. All right, say we have some documents. Here's one such example. It's a press release from Red Hat announcing the acquisition of neural magic. It's pretty long, detailed, and even though I'm interested in the content, I don't want to read every single line of it. What I want instead is something like this: a short, clean summary, straight to the point, and generated automatically using LLM. In this case, this was generated using Gemini. But what if I want to customize my small language model to generate this down? All I would need is to collect such documents and then use a teacher model to synthetically generate these samples. And how I do it through SDG Hub is with this YAML snippet right here. In this case, I'm using a Llama 3.3 model as my teacher. And what this does is it defines everything: the task, the prompt, the teacher model to use, and even how long the output should be. But what's actually happening here? What are these lines of YAML doing? So here's the YAML snippet again, the one we used to generate the summary. Let's break it down and understand what this really is. In SDG Hub, we call this entire thing a block. So what's a block? If I want to be formal, it's a self-contained computational unit that performs a specific task. But more intuitively, think of it like a Lego brick. You can reuse them, stack them, and unlike real Lego bricks, you can even configure them. So how do we configure these blocks? So let's start with the config path. Since this is an LLM block, this block tells where the prompt lives. The instructions, the tone, verbosity, it's all defined in the prompt. We'll actually dive deeper into the prompts in the next slide. Next, it's a model ID. This tells the LLM block which model to use as its teacher. You can plug in any open source model, Llama, Mistral, Qwen, DeepSeek, Nemotron, whatever suits your task. And you can even have these models hosted with your favorite inference provider, like VLLM, Ollama, or LlamaStack. Finally, there's GenKWorks. These are just like advanced settings, like max tokens, temperature, and so on. So you still have full control if you want. So that's a block. Modular, configurable, and when you start putting them together, that's where things get real interesting. We'll come back to that later. So let's dive deeper into how we configure these LLM blocks. And the answer is through prompt. So this is where your instructions live. You tell the model how it should behave and what the output should sound like and what constraints to follow. In SDG Hub, these prompts live in a separate YAML file, and the block just points to it using the config path. So let's look at the prompts for our use case. I'm sure all prompt engineers and us watching this would immediately recognize this. It starts with a system message to set the behavior. In this case, you're saying you're a helpful assistant that can summarize the text. Then it walks through an introduction, some principles or constraints like, don't add any new information. And finally ends with the actual generation instruction. So you're not really hard coding any logic. You're designing its behavior, your teacher model's behavior. And you can tune this prompt as much or as little as you want. You can change the tone, add examples, give it a specific structure you want it to follow. This kind of prompt modularity is really powerful because it lets you try different LLMs without modifying the block code at all. So let's revisit our document, the same press release we looked at earlier. We've already seen how we can generate a clean, concise summary from it. That was just one block, one prompt, and a few lines of YAML. But what if I also want my enterprise model to extract keywords from this document? Maybe I want tags for search indexing. Or maybe I want to feed these into a classified downstream to enable some sort of a production pipeline I have in my organization. In traditional workflows, that would mean stitching together different scripts, juggling between inputs and outputs. But with SDG Hub, to generate such data with your teacher model, it's just as simple as adding another block. So when you put these two blocks together, you get what we call a flow. So this YAML defines a simple flow. It runs the first block to generate a summary and then passes the result to a second block to extract keywords from it. Formally, a flow is a sequence of blocks where the data flows from one to the next. It's simple, it's linear, and it's real. So here's what it will look like visually. So you generate summary, you generate keywords from it, and that's it. There's no glue code, there's no chaining scripts, there's no saving to disk and then reloading again. It's just define the sequence in YAML, and SDG Hub handles the orchestration. But that's not all. You can easily extend this further. Say you want to evaluate the generations using some metrics, like faithfulness, relevancy, and then assign a score to each one of them. And since blocks are not only restricted to LLM calling, any Pythonic function can be wrapped as a block. So in this case, let's say we use those rating and we want to filter them. You can just simply write a filter function using Python and register it as a block. And you can filter out the samples, making sure that you only retain the highest quality synthetic data samples from it. And with a few documents and a seed examples you collect, you can generate hundreds to thousands of synthetic data samples. We can use these samples to further customize our enterprise language model and then use it as a summarization tool. So let's quickly recap what we just did. We started with a document, we added a summarization block, we chained the keyword extraction block, and configured the whole thing using a YAML file. That's it. You just built a fully functioning data generation pipeline. And the best part, all of this, we're writing just very little code. So with just a few core concepts, like blocks, prompts, and flows, you can build arbitrarily complex generation workflows that scale from toy examples to production pipelines. If you're an advanced user, SDG Hub also gives you control to expand it further just using Python. I'm going to hand it off to Abhishek, who's going to show you how you can take this even further by building a multi-step generation pipeline with weaved in some evaluation using SDG Hub. Over to you, Abhishek.
Do you? Yeah. I'll need to share.
Yeah. Awesome.
Right. So let's customize a reasoning model. So what do you need? I have some documents, and I would like to convert those documents into the training example you see at the right. What that training example shows is I have a question, and I would like the model to reason on that, and then finally answer it. And we're going to use SDG Hub and everything shipped out us to actually build this. So let's look at the high-level overview of what the reading pipeline looks like. There are three phases. Summary generator is going to summarize your document. QA generation, that's going to take the summary and then generate the question and answers, where the answer has the thinking block. And then finally, do quality check of the data. What I want to do is I want to make sure that the data is actually grounded in my provided document. Now, in summary generator, as you might see, I've highlighted the green blocks. Those are the blocks that I need to write to handle the thinking tokens that a model generates. And I might need to use those at various places. The modular design of SDG will let me do that. And I'll show you shortly how to quickly do this in Python and then integrate this. So with this, let's actually look at how the flow looks like. So on the right is the flow I've written in SDG Hub. You can go to our SDG Hub, look at the full example, you can play with the notebook and actually run through the entire demo if you like. On the left is how I've arranged all the blocks I'm using in the flow. And the greens are the ones that I have to write for this demo. I guess we have a QR code at the start of the slide, and I will also be showing the SDG Hub QR code at the end. And Akash will share the. Awesome. Okay, so as I was mentioning, SDG Hub is modular, which means that I can reuse components from existing pipelines, as well as it's very easy to add my own thing. So because a thinking model tends to give thinking blocks, I would like to remove it. So let me show you how to easily write your own small block or a customized block, if you may. Okay, so writing SDG blocks is very straightforward. All you have to do is write a small Python snippet where you can wrap in any Python function into a block. Or simply just take the block class, extend it, write your logic inside the generate function, and you're good to go. Register the block, and now you can use the block anywhere you would like in your flow. Now, once you want to add the block into your flow, simply add the YAML code you see on the left. Now you can inject this anywhere you would like, and it will work the same way as you programmed it to. And also, if you would like to make it advanced, you can inject more parameters, and it will be more general for a more general use case. Okay, so once we have our flow YAML written, we're ready to run SDG. Running an SDG can be done in very few lines of code. Simply import SDG Hub, point it to your YAML that you just wrote, and then instantiate the SDG object. Once you have the SDG object, simply do SDG generate, and it will start generating documents. SDG Hub also comes with some advanced optimization parameters if you would like to play with it, or you can just use the default parameters. Both work. And this connects to any of the inference platforms that Shiv mentioned, like VLM, Ollama, or any OpenAI compatible endpoints. So once we have SDG running, we're ready to train. But let's look at a single example to see how this example gets transformed as we go through the flow. Right? So what I have is a document on electric vehicles talking about pros and cons. And then I have some seed examples that are going to show you how to generate data, or what type of data to generate, or like data. So let's inject this document into our flow and let's walk step by step. The first step in summarization is brainstorming topics to summarize this document. So we look at the document and I say, all right, what are the different ways to summarize this? You can do an academic essay, or you can do an environmental focused summary. So this stage will take the document, create this list of topics. Once you have this list of topics, let's go and pick one topic and generate the summary on it. So I picked the one that has environmental focus, and the next stage will take the document, create the summary, and then basically end it with the advantages and disadvantages. Once the summary is done, we are ready to actually do the most important part, which is create this synthetic question and answers, where the answer shows this thinking process. The first step is to actually generate the questions. So we take the summary I just generated and create a list of questions that are based on the document. Again, under the hood, Flow is handling different post-processing blocks that we just wrote, and it's going to produce a list of questions, and then we pick one question and let's ask one to generate an answer. Because this is a reasoning model, when you give it a question, it will first think about it and then finally generate the answer. This is kind of how it looks like. Now, you might have realized by now that thinking models are great and they generate answers, but how do I make sure that they are actually grounded in my document? So SDG Hub, as Shiv mentioned, lets you do various types of evaluation. In this case, for example, I'm going to pick faithfulness. So I want to make sure that my document is my answer is faithful to the document, or all the claims in the answer supported by the document. I'll use the faithfulness evaluation. It will give me a nice explanation of why it thinks it's faithful, and then give me a final score. Is it yes or no? So with this is how a single sample looks like. Let's actually go ahead and run this through the entire SDG. And once you have the SDG, we can start training. So for training, I'm using InstaClub training package. Training can also be done in very few steps. If you like to play with the code or check out the package, you can go to this QR code. We recently published at iClear about recipes on proper instruction tuning. We got state-of-the-art results on a lot of models. Do check out the poster, the paper, and the QR code training package. Okay, so now we've covered data generation and training. Let's look at some results. So as Akash mentioned, training a document helps model learn better. So what we did was we took a Nemotron nano model. I took a quality benchmark and I trained it using our pipeline. I first tested the Nemotron nano model on a question. So the blue graph is its performance on the benchmark. Now I took the trained model and tested it on that. You see a 41% boost That's because the model is able to recall facts and reason on them much better than before. But we don't stop there. As Akash mentioned, it also helps RAG performance. So what we did was we took the nano model and we put it in a RAG setting. Because it can think, it can do RAG really well. And so blue graph is what the nano model does. But then how well does it do if it's already learned your document? We see a 27% boost in RAG performance when we train it on the document. So training on document helps the model reason even better, even though they're both deployed in the RAG setting and they can both see the document during inference time. So with this, I think we are coming to the end of the talk. You can visit the code, and if you would like, I can also show you a quick demo of how the model looks like, but we can open up for questions in meantime.
Thanks, Ajay. Yeah, I think the purpose of keeping the talk fairly short was to ensure that we get ample time to go through the questions. So there's one on YouTube, I think. I'm gonna just say it out loud and see if Abhishek, you want to pick up, or maybe Shiv. The question is from Arun Kumar, and he asks, can we give a customized schema? I think what he's referring to here is, can we have a YAML that is has custom blocks and sort of pipeline that is tailored very much to the use case that they have in mind. Essentially, blocks that are not available in the repository.
So as I mentioned before, and as Shiv was saying, you can wrap any Python code as a block.
Can you put this in slideshow mode?
Yeah. So you can wrap any block in any Python code into a LLM block. So for example, in this case, I wanted to post-process some part of the string. I can put that in. Say you have a custom workflow where you want to do some transformations. You can simply inject that code into the block class and then chain those together. And then I guess if you want to design very specific prompts for doing very specific things, simply use the prompts that Shiv mentioned where you plug in your prompt and then just chain them together. And the transformation block will take care of like a glue between them and transforming it.
So maybe just to add a little bit, yes, absolutely. The answer is like you can have your custom schema. That's the entire point of this library. It allows you to write your own flow. What we have done is we have provided certain blocks that we think everybody will need, things like LLM blocks, things like the bunch of utilities that we have, some evaluation blocks. But each one of them you can extend, inherit from, and override, or just write your own. As Shiv explained, you can change. You can literally have a different block point to a different teacher model if you would like. So the whole point of SDG Hub is to let you create your own blocks available in the repo by default as just sort of a just to help you get started. Yeah, so
yeah. Okay, so again, if it is not applicable here, that's fine. So for example, right now, all this is optimized with a chunker that is for extracting knowledge from text. So if I want to run this and I need a different type of chunker, is there a different way to modify that and still benefit from the library?
So I guess think of it independent of chunker. But if you wanna, so when you say benefit from it, what do you exactly mean?
Use the rest. LLM? Yeah, use the rest of the pipeline.
So you can use LLM blocks, for example, to do different type of chunking than say your static chunkers would. So for example, convert the document into logical sections and then pick individual logical sections as chunks. Or you can use any static chunker, plug it in, and then just chunk document.
You don't onboard any chunker.
Yeah, you can definitely connect any chunker to the input. The input is simply the document, and your document can be a collection of documents, which in this case would be chunks.
I see.
Yeah.
So
you can use
you're expecting already the document chunked.
Yeah, it can be chunked. The good thing is, so the model we used for the quality demo was Nemotron Super, which has a very big context length. So I was actually able to put documents as big as 8,000 tokens in a single context.
Awesome.
And it is very effective in going over it, summarizing it. So that actually relaxes the constraint of, I really need to chunk my document down. You can go with very large documents. That's why enterprise documents can be like multiple pages. So
Yeah, the use case is like sometimes there's customers that are asking for, hey, I want to learn these logs and the explanation.
yeah,
And those need to be there.
exactly. Yeah. And the good thing is because of the design of SDG Hub not being dependent on a single feature model, you should be able to plug in really large summarization models if you like, and then use those for handling the large documents before they get fed into the subsequent blocks that don't need to have that big of a document.
Cool.
So there's a question I just wanted to kind of maybe say it out loud because it might be relevant to a bunch of other people. The question on where they go? Is Dockling part of the SDG pipeline too? The answer is no, but Dockling is a friend of SDG Hub, so you can use Dockling or any of your favorite document parsing tool kit to convert your document to text. Another question is on people who are familiar with Instruct Lab workflow. So will this replace the Q&A YAML in iLab? The answer is yes and no. It still requires seed examples. You can provide that through Q&A YAML or write directly as a script. Both workflows are totally fine. Also, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question directly if that is easier.
I have a question, Akshay. In the example that you showed for model customization, I'm very confused on, did you enhance the performance of a reasoning model, or you took a normal model and you made it into a reasoning model?
So for this benchmark, we took the Nemo Nano model. So already, that's what I was showing in the graph. Is that I take a reasoning model and I reason on the document. That's the I get. But now if I customize my document, the reasoning also gets so only that in the last two bars is the customization on the document. There's a question. 20%, 20%.
No, so let's go and yeah. I think are you able to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yes. Yeah, I just had a question. I wanted to make sure I heard correctly. So if we have like a script, a Python script that generates Q&As that are the seed examples, we can pass that to the workflow, the blocks. And does that bypass the need of actually creating the taxonomy YAMLs? Or we would still need the taxonomy? Yep.
Yeah, so maybe let me sort of explain this point a little bit better, because I think there's been some confusion about it, and I'm not saying this is the confusion in this case, taxonomy and so maybe it's a good way to correct this thing. According to the original work, the lab paper, taxonomy is essentially some arrangement of the kind of domain or topics that we want to generate data. Q&A YAML is a leaf node in that taxonomy. So two separate things. The purpose of Q&A YAML is to provide the seed example on the parent node in that taxonomy. That doesn't necessarily go away. It has never been a dependency to say. Even in the original design, what the algorithm, the generating algorithm consumes is the example. The taxonomy is as a concept exists to arrange the kind of skills and knowledge that you would want to impart in your model. There is no dependency in the algorithmic side to specifically consume a taxonomy directly. Does that help explain?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
That's a great question also, just because I think there's some related question in the chat around that. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
I guess the follow-up question is the need for like domain and industry specific SMEs. So that still exists. Like all the seed examples will be provided by the.
Well, yes and no. So I think this is also, let me take this question up again, because I think this is something that would benefit from some clarification on need and improvement, right? So do you need an SME to give you Q&A YAML document? Absolutely not. You can go in and write your own examples. The quality of your examples doesn't, let me put it this way, the impact that you have on your final output, at least in the work we have done so far, as long as your Q&A or YAML are reasonable, right? They're not completely on a different topic tone than the document is, you will get a decent performance now. You will see those bars. Now, improving the quality of the seed examples obviously will improve the output. But that doesn't mean you need to have an SME produce it. Does that hopefully that helps with this discussion of whether you need an SME to give you the Q&A YAML. Shrikant, do you want to maybe unmute and expand on your question a little bit? I don't think I'm able to understand. Would that be possible?
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is like, suppose I am inclined towards certain, belief systems or reasonings or arguments, and I could write answers in the Q&A YAML in a very biased and inclined manner. If I end up writing in that manner, definitely the teacher model or that would generate this final synthetic data would also start writing the answers in such inclinations, right?
Yes. So you still have that control in the seed examples that you provide. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a question on, I think it would help to clarify precisely where SDG Hub supplements the current iLab SDG workflow in general. So without getting into too much detail on the technical differences here, because that will take a while, SDG Hub is the underlying SDG algorithm behind iLab. Okay. So what we're trying to show right now is the SDK view of the same library. When we think of iLab, there's a very specific workflow, it's a particular instantiation of, or if you will, particular flow.yaml. What we're trying to show now is we have opened that box and said, if you wanted to customize that flow in any way, you could use the SDK to do that. That's the main difference behind, or how SDG Hub fits with the existing iLab.
I see, that helps. I actually didn't realize that. That clarifies a lot.
No, it's an excellent question, because I think this is sort of so one example. The reason we chose for Abhishek to show the example of customizing a reasoning model with knowledge was in his particular workflow, he had to create those green blocks that are new, because reasoning models have additional sort of generation that had to be taken out or treated differently. What we have basically done, if you realize, is we've taken the old iLab knowledge workflow and essentially inserted a few more blocks. So this is just the behind the scenes version of how iLab SDG works.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Awesome.
if we were interested in maybe digging into, I guess we could go on the GitHub link that you provided to understand a bit more of the architecture behind it if we needed to.
Yes, I mean, we would be very open to any feedback on if a particular type of session would help. You know, we can definitely, the SDG Hub is totally open source. We can start a discussion there. And feel free to add your own blocks. There are already people who have added some blocks around translations and things that we did not have. Also, equally happy if you think it will help to have another session dedicated to particular aspects or particular pipeline constructions.
Gotcha. No, that helps. It helped when you clarified that the SDG Hub was actually the generalization of what we had with iLab today, because
Correct.
I
And the
couldn't.
hub will also include new data generation methods in addition to what we already have. So it will be a hub of different methods that you can use.
Yeah, okay, that's why when I heard hub, I was thinking something else, like model hub, like a catalog, something like that. And it's kind of a hub, but it's more in terms of more types of extensions to the types of
But the aim is to have as many methods, yet keep it modular so that we can reuse the components everywhere.
Yeah.
And
And
create new
the design principle, as I think Shiv explained, was you can technically take pretty much any of the existing algorithm, either written by us or written by other folks, so self-construct or Orca and so on, and actually express it as blocks in this flow. So the idea behind Hub was to say, hey, a common way to express all those algorithms with any kind of teacher model hosted on any kind of platform to bring them together.
Okay, gotcha.
So there's a question on faithfulness block, Akshay. You want to take it? Okay.
So the core idea is I have a document.
Do you want to maybe read out the question first, just for the YouTube audience?
You mean this one?
Yeah, so the question is, can you please explain more about faithfulness block? Is there a way to just evaluate Q&A pair generated instead of evaluating the final answer with thinking?
Yes, yeah. So just to give you an overview of what faithfulness block is I have a answer that I've generated that is based on a document, and I would like to make sure every one of those claims that are mentioned in the answer are actually coming from the document. Now, this is done through an LLM block. What LLM block, as Shiv explained, is a prompt, and you simply give the model the document, the answer, and ask it to evaluate the faithfulness. You can easily edit this to now say, all right, can you make sure that the question and the answer comes from the document? So you can use either the faithfulness block we have or simply extend it to include the question if you like. We also have something called relevancy block that says, hey, can you make sure this question is relevant to this document? So that will also solve your use case, where you chain the relevancy and the faithfulness back to back.
And maybe something to highlight here is that if you already have a way or a method that you created to quality control, I mean, this is one of the points that Shiv iterated and then Abhishek showed, you can easily write it as a block or a simple Python program or a function, and then register it in the block. And then what the flow does is that, yeah, so this particular example, right? So here, he wanted to kind of take out the think token, and so he just wrote it as a separate block, right? So if you have ways in which you already evaluate, all you have to do is register it as a block, and then it automatically applies on all the generation. One aspect that we did not cover, which might be worth expanding on, is on the scalability. I think Shiv made a comment. I don't know if you want to expand on how today we deal with batching, leverage the built-in batching and the LLM and what that.
Yeah. I think Abhishek mentioned it when you're actually running the SDG workflow. We do expose a bunch of additional hyperparameters, like batch size, number of clients. And how it works is you're breaking down your seed data set into batches, and we spin up a bunch of clients, and all of these are generating in parallel. And since we treat samples as IID or independent of each other, these are embarrassingly parallel. So natively, it supports this parallelization. And this way, if you have enough GPU clusters, you can scale it arbitrarily.
And then Rich has a question about, I just put it out there because I think it might be of interest to others, about Llama Stack support. So just to kind of clarify here, yes, as Shiv said earlier, any OpenAI compatible endpoint works. For making our method work with Llama Stack, there is a wrapper available within. There's a very thin layer of wrapper available that lets you treat Llama Stack as if it was essentially an OpenAI endpoint. So it does, if you have an endpoint exposed via Llama Stack, it also works.
We do have some instructions on how to host your teacher model using Llama Stack inference on our examples. I think Mustafa shared a link. Feel free to go there and check it out.
Akash, do you guys have any plans to like convert this into a Docker Hub kind of place where the community can also share the flows that they come up with?
That's a great point. We already have the contribution from the community on their flows and blocks. So there's one interesting one is on the translation block, thing that came from India, where they have for sort of languages that, for Indic languages, they wrote a little block on using the LLM. According to Shiv, it should have been inherited. I agree, but it's a translation block that takes a input in certain English and then translates it back to language. So yes, that's absolutely the plan, to actually give the community a way to easily express their transformations on data and submit it as examples. This is probably a question for William. Then William will answer it. Will there be hooks to integrate SDG Hub flows with data science pipelines and ROI?
We are working on a process that will allow you to run all of this natively on data science pipeline. That's probably the statement I can make at this point. But yes, expect workbenches, images, etc. with all this, such that you can do this flow precisely starting from there if you want to.
Nice. Oh, sorry. Did you have a timeline for that?
No, we cannot discuss that at this
Oh, okay, got you. Fair enough.
Until we wait for our next question, I wanted to show you the demo I was mentioning.
You forget this?
All right, so what I did was I took the Nemotron model that I had trained on quality, and I retrained it on finance bench data. So I took SEC filings and asked it to basically reason on that and then train on that data. Now, if I ask it a question, but I need to go through like different parts of the document, pick the numbers, and then do the math, which also, by the way, needs some knowledge of finance because you don't add all of those. If there is cash output, you subtract that number, for example. Now, if I pose the question to my trained reasoning model, it is able to reason very, very well. And when it reasons, it can go back, redo its reasoning, correct itself, criticize itself, and then finally arrives at the final answer. If, by contrast, if I use a non-reasoning model, it will simply do it in three or four lines. And it, as expected, mostly gets it wrong. So that is kind of why you would want to customize a reasoning model versus go with a non-reasoning, especially if your use cases more math heavy, or it's a mix of math, finance, mix of logic, reasoning with your data. Or in general, reasoning models are just super cool. So
maybe just a point to make here is that what Abhishek is really trying to convey is you would expect that if you took a reasoning model and asked it a question on the finance domain, which typically requires some sort of mathematical reasoning, if you will, you would expect it to be do very well. What we found is that's not really the case, at least for the models that we tested.
yeah.
But once he took the SEC filings and went through his pipeline, generated the data, and trained the model or customized it, it did drastically improve in its ability to nail finance bench, which is a benchmark of such questions, right? And as you can, what he's really trying to show is that the pipeline for customizing reasoning model, as you can imagine, requires to generate data that already has some form of thinking in there, right? So that's how he's able to get improve the performance of the Nemotron model on finance bench without sort of doing any prompt engineering. Okay, I think that's probably all the questions that we were gonna get today. Again, if you have any suggestion on what kind of session on this topic would help, please feel free to reach out to me, and we can try to organize that. We're gonna leave the line open for a bit. If you want to ask a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and then just ask. But I really want to thank everybody again for jumping in and asking amazing questions. So thank you. So it's the question, and apologies if I missed it. Do the flows support one-to-many docs, or can there be only one doc per flow? No, you can pass as many documents as you would like. The example that Abhishek was showing was just to kind of walk you through a single document. But you can pass an entire directory or a database of documents, and the SDG Hub sort of background services will just go and replicate it on every single document. So that part you don't have to configure at all. It's just if you point it to a collection of document, all that is done for you in the background.